Recently recognized by Golf Digest as one of the sport's great masterminds, Dr. Gregg Steinberg has consulted with some of the greatest athletes from both the PGA and LPGA. His expertise has also been sought by NBA stars as well as NFL stars. Dr. Steinberg is an expert in achieving peak performance and a world-renowned sports psychologist, speaker, author, and TV personality. Please welcome Dr. Gregg Steinberg.
Today's talk, even though I'm a sports psychologist, is not about sport. It's about life. It's about performance. And I don't even see myself as a sports psychologist. I see myself as a performance psychologist. But the principles of sport, there's a lot of pressure. You feel a lot of pressure. There's a lot of outcome in sport. You have outcomes that you have to attain. There's time constraints in sport. You have time constraints. The situations are the same. So ultimately, you're really a corporate athlete. So why not look at what the great athletes do, their strategies, what makes them great, and apply that to your world? So ultimately, it's my goal to show you how to move from a corporate athlete to become a corporate champion. Muhammad Ali. Long before he was boxing champion of the world, long before he strode up those stairs shaking from Parkinson's to light the Olympic flame in Atlanta, he grew up very poor in Louisville. His mother could barely afford enough food, let alone toys, but the young Muhammad Ali saw this blue bike. It was a Schwinn, had a great leather seat and a handlebar, and he loved this bike. So all summer long, he boxed groceries at the local grocery store, excuse the pun, finally had enough money for this bike, handed the shopkeeper the money, rode all over Louisville the next day, showing off to his friends and his family this blue bike, parked his bike in front of the grocery store the next day, made sure the lock was nice and tight, came back out from work. Someone had clipped his lock and stolen his bike. And Muhammad Ali looked all summer for his bike, never found his bike, and never found out who stole his bike. But we all know Muhammad Ali is a true champion, and he harnessed that negative energy into a positive. So every time he'd step in the ring, he'd point at his opponent and say, "You're the guy who stole my blue bike." And that's a true story.
I work with professional athletes on building mental toughness and emotional toughness. And what the audience might not know is that the stars have to master the physical game, the mental game, and the emotional game. These stars are facing intense pressure every week. They have to know what their body's going to do and then respond to that pressure.
But let me talk about being prepared. And being prepared comes from going back to the basics of the basics. Now, John Wooden would teach the basics of the basics at the start of the first day of every season. And you're probably thinking, what would he teach? What's the basics of the basics? Dribbling, free throw shooting? No, it was putting on your socks. John Wooden, the famous UCLA coach, would tell every player how to put on their socks correctly, because if you didn't put on your socks correctly, you would get blisters, and if you got blisters, you couldn't practice, and then you might miss games. That's the basics of the basics. Well, in terms of emotional toughness, not only for individuals or for teams, it's what we say to ourselves.
How much of it is physical for Michael Phelps, and how much is it mental?
Well, Heather, he's such a phenom, it's amazing. I mean, he's got great physical skills, but it's also his mental game that brings him to the top. And we don't appreciate the mental game because we only see the physical skills, but clearly Michael's mental game is head and shoulders above the rest. Well, that same principle relates to our life, except that we have an inner caddy. And our inner caddy can be kind and nurturing and good. And our inner caddy can be negative and destructive. Now, we have inner caddies for golf. This is my inner caddy. When my good inner caddy comes out and says, "Smooth and easy, champ," I hit it down the middle. And when my bad inner caddy comes out and says, "You idiot, don't hit in the water," I hit in the water. But we also have inner caddies for business. And in these tough economic times, many of our inner caddies have turned to the dark side. And now we tell ourselves, we're not going to make those quotas. This is unfair. I hate change. I don't like my boss. I don't like those clients. Those clients don't like me. Why don't we fire that bad inner caddy in a heartbeat? Well, in a lot of cases, that has become a habit. But what I've learned in my 20 years working with professional athletes, consulting business executives, is that all these successful people fire their bad inner caddy in a heartbeat, and they train and retrain and retrain and retrain their good inner caddy.
What makes Sorenstam the woman to do this as opposed to somebody else? I guess because of this attitude, right?
Well, if you could describe Annika's mental game in one statement, it is the best or never satisfied, and she's one of the best of all time.
Are you happy? Not just right now, but in your lives. Because happiness is your right. More than 200 years ago, Thomas Jefferson penned in the Declaration of Independence, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that we're endowed by the Creator with inalienable rights, those being the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Unfortunately, many of us pursue happiness using the wrong currency. We go on vacations, we go shopping, we buy stuff, and it's kind of like our happiness has a bucket. We have a happiness bucket. And we have to continually feel it because our happiness bucket has holes in it. Even success sometimes won't fill up our happiness bucket. I remember a couple years ago, Tom Brady was on 60 Minutes, and Tom Brady is one of the most successful quarterbacks in history. And Ed Bradley asked him, "What do you think about your success?" And Tom says, "I keep on asking myself, is this all there is? Is this all there is?" Because for Tom, his success was not filling up his happiness bucket. It wasn't plugging up the holes. What we know from psychology is the way to plug up the holes in your happiness bucket, to have long-term happiness, to have authentic happiness, is to have meaning in our lives, to have purpose, and to have pride in what we do. My philosophy is this. We always hear this thing about mental toughness. It's really about emotional toughness. Your emotions control your performance. The good news is your thinking controls your emotions. And if you have the right thoughts, you're going to have the right emotions. And if you have the right emotions, you're going to play your best. And I want to end today talking about the butterfly effect. And the butterfly effect was proposed by a scientist in the 1960s. And he said, the flapping of the wings of a butterfly can create weather changes across the globe. And everybody laughed at him, and you're probably thinking, that's kind of silly. And when I heard about that, I thought that was kind of silly. But in the 1990s, the scientists supported the principle of the butterfly effect. And that is, small changes on one side of the world can have a huge impact in terms of weather on the other side of the globe. And life is like that. You are the butterfly effect. When you have small changes in your life, like turn pressure into pleasure, like fire your bad inner caddy and train and retrain your good inner caddy, that can have a huge impact in your life. And just as important, we are the butterfly effect, because what you do at Hughes has a huge impact throughout the globe. And I challenge you to always believe that Hughes is the butterfly effect and continues to be the butterfly effect. So I leave you, have a great year, and I challenge you to continue that mental and emotional toughness. Thank you very much.